Welcome to Season 8 of Paper Talk,
where we will explore how to build a creative community that fuels your art and your business.
Hi, I'm Nguyen of Pink and Posy.
I'm Jessie Chui of Crafted to Bloom.
And I'm Sara Kim of Handmade by Sara Kim.
This season is all about connections.
We'll share stories, strategies, and collaborations that strengthen your own community.
Tune in every other Thursday for new episodes.
Thanks for joining us today, and be sure to follow Paper Talk Podcast. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Paper Talk. So we just finished with a mastermind meeting and a topic came up that we thought was really interesting. And we all thought that maybe some of you had the same problem or concern. And it was interesting because Jessie, Sara, and we kind of talked about how we didn't really encounter this particular problem because we started a decade ago. And it was more about how do you go about moving from borrowing or using other people's templates and going about using your own templates to make your own paper flowers. And the interesting part why that came up was they were worried. They were concerned and they felt not confident in their skills to actually make the flower. And I think what was so freeing for all three of us when we started 10 plus years ago, was that there was not a lot of resources. So we had to really figure out how to go about making our own templates so we can create all these beautiful flowers. And I think I'll share my little background is I wanted to be a master gardener. I was totally invested on farm to table method, working at a farm, learning how to grow organically. And that just sparked that fire in me and that passion to be like, I love plants. And then they made me so happy. And it was just a natural transition to be like, I love studying. I love reading. I love being resourceful. And nature was literally at my fingertips. I could take a flower apart, use those petals, those leaves, and observe natures and make notes of it, and was able to use and make my own templates. Whereas now, you guys have it so easy, I feel like, because now you have all these amazing educators, instructors, teachers that makes beautiful flowers. And all you have to do is download the template, either use a cutting machine to cut it for you or print the template and then hand cut them all. And I feel like you had such a huge advantage. But also I felt like we had the advantage of really observing the unnatural, I would say, the petals, because not every petal's the same. And when you have a template, you usually have one petal that you cut over and over and over again. So it looks really perfect. But if you observe nature in general, it's really unperfect. And I think that is what makes the flower in nature so beautiful. And so I want to remind everyone, give yourself grace. You don't have to cut your petal perfectly as the template shows you. Feel free to make it a little bit wonky, make it a little bit bigger, make it a little bit smaller, and tear it, because you'll be surprised how that little imperfection will make your flower stand out of the hundreds of people that makes the flowers. And I want to give you guys that. Just give yourself the grace to look at the template and then just freehand and cut it, because that will be your jumping point to start making your own templates and observe nature. The reason why we all love paper flowers is because we love the real thing and we're honoring the flower by making it and recreating it and how we see it in our mind and how we push it out in our hands. How about you, Sara and Jessie? How did you guys start making paper flowers and templates?
Yeah, the same way with you. I did come up with my own templates in the beginning. I didn't have any resources, just like you said. So I just kind of came up with it on my own. And honestly, I was not the type of artist that kept record of each template. So every time I made it, it was going to look a little different. Just kind of did it out of muscle memory. And then I want to say I got a little bit more familiar with the cutting machine. So maybe 5 years ago. So it wasn't even that long ago that I finally figured out how to make templates. But before that, I was just doing it from just my memory. And a lot of times I'm like, oh, you embrace the jaggedy edges. You embrace kind of the wonkiness, like you were saying, the flaws. And I kind of made a whole career out of that, And so actually, once I started using the cutting machines to help me cut, it kind of conflicted with what I wanted it to look like. It was looking too perfect and every single flower was looking the same because they were looking like a perfect oval. And maybe I was adding a little bit of jaggedy edges, but they were all the same jaggedy edges. And I didn't really like that. So I actually felt like I had to go and have different versions of each template and make different versions of each file and everything like that. And I felt like that's what set me apart from other people that did make templates for cutting machines, because I felt like a lot of my flowers had that different look. Each petal was going to look a little different. And I do it on purpose. So I actually do like sketch it out through the iPad and I try to add the squiggly lines on purpose, especially like the rose. A lot of people think like, oh, how come your rose look a little different from like your typical stamped out rose petal? And I say, oh, I add like little cuts on purpose to make it look like it's slightly torn or have it a little bit, lopsided. And it's okay because I feel like a rose never looks perfect. Now, I think it looks different when it is a flower that's more symmetrical. Then obviously, then you want everything to look the same. And sometimes our projects that we get, even from companies, they want exactly the same flowers. Then that's like a whole different concept. And yeah, you need a template for it. So you make sure that every single one looks the same. But I do think like when we're trying to mimic nature, it does have to look a little different. And another thing with also like colors and stuff like that too, because we try to do a whole different variety of a pink shade of flower or something. So yeah, I think template is very important though in general, like whether it is in your memory and your muscle memory, I think experimenting it on your own is going to be a good way to start your business and like build your brand and build like your expression to that flower, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I am kind of ambivalent. There's ambivalence to templating and not templating. Like I'm never really sure how I feel about it. But when I did start, like you said, Quynh, like there wasn't a lot of resources. Leah Griffith had come up with, I think around the same time, it was her like crepe paper revival. And she had started marketing and pinning some tutorials that she had. So I did actually look into some of her tutorials because I was like, oh, what is this? And so the interesting thing about, did I make any of her flowers? No, I didn't. But I did look at her templates. I looked at them because I was curious. Like, I was like, how do you actually template a flower? Like, when you have no idea, you're curious, right? And so there's nothing wrong at all with looking at templates, using other people's templates. I think it's an amazing way to learn very quickly how someone does something. Why reinvent the wheel, right? That's why we offer online courses or workshops and give you our templates because we're like, you know what? We found a way that works. This is how we do it and we share it. And then you can decide whether or not it works for you or, do you need to change some things or whatnot. I think that templating yourself, though, you get to learn a lot about yourself and what you think is important in your expression of your art. Yeah, Quynh, you were talking about how like if you cut petals that are 2 inches or 2.5 inches, like that always worked for you for all your flowers. And for me, it's slightly smaller. I don't know. I've always just done something slightly smaller. 1.5, 2 is my maximum length. That's what's unique about our work, right? That defines our work because we have certain preferences. We have certain preferences of sizing for our petals, preferences for how we cut our petals. The base of our petals are different. I know that. I mean, I've done enough tutorials with you guys to know we have different ways of doing things. Yes. And I think that's what's cool is like, on the one hand, you can learn from other people and use their templates and see how they use their templates and how they make their templates. And on the other hand, like after that, processing all of that, you've learned a lot. You do have to trust yourself that you can do it too. You can do it in a way that feels comfortable to you and to that particular flower, perhaps. And I think through that process, you learn a lot about yourself and your own style. And when we're talking about imposter syndrome and talking about like, how do I find my style? What is my style? I think it's that process alone, that process of finding yourself through actually doing the work, actually asking yourself, do I want my petal base to be like that? Or what size am I comfortable working with? Maybe I have bigger hands than Jessie and Quynh. Maybe I need to work with bigger petals or bigger flowers. Or maybe I love, my other interest is miniatures. I really want to make everything really small. But that's part of you. That's part of your experience and what you like and your preferences. And so when you are drawing out your templates, figuring out what size your flower is, all of that goes towards what will result in a final product that looks like you. That's your aesthetic. So I do think that at a certain point, go for it, just try. It doesn't hurt. You can start with somebody's, like, let's say you can start with one of my templates and maybe just tweak it a bit, change it up. Maybe add another petal that's slightly different. Maybe lengthen the petal shape because you like to make it a little bit bigger. Maybe add some squiggly lines like Sara was saying, something along those lines to make it fully yours. And don't be, and kind of start morphing. I think the more comfortable you are with changing up what you already have, the more comfortable you will be in starting from quote unquote scratch, even though you never really start from scratch, right? As I was saying, like we start with certain measurements. And so for me, it's been a struggle because like Sara, like I do prefer things that are not necessarily perfect. I always feel like doesn't turn out the way that I want it to look. So in the past, I've always had an idea. So I'll draw out like what the shape of the petal or sepal or whatever it is. And I'll draw in a square or rectangle with measurements. So 2 inches, maybe wide 1 inch. And I would freehand cut that petal to look like that using those measurements. And I found that works because the measurements help me, right? Change up the size, maybe a smaller petal, maybe a bigger petal. And that in itself creates that randomness that you want in a flower. But over time, what I've found also is that the templates, if I actually use physical templates that are already that petal and I just use it, trace it, or, cut around it, that also helps prime me. It reminds me of what I've done from that flower. And so funny enough, the longer I've been doing this, the more I actually really prefer to rely on physical templates because it takes me less time to get back to that mind space of making that flower. Because after you've made 50 flowers, you forget. And then you have to spend the time to look over your notes again. What are the measurements? Like, what did I exactly do to this paper? When sometimes having that physical template, that exact shape, that exact size will naturally remind you of what you did. So it's a system. You kind of have to figure out your own system, like what works for you. You can still create randomness with pre-cut templates. You absolutely can do that. Like Sarah was saying, you can maybe make more of them. Instead of one style of petal, make 5. Maybe they're all the same size, but they're slightly different. And at least that way, when you jump back into a project, it's not going to be a chore. It's not going to be like, oh, this huge barrier of, oh my God, I got to relive this. I got to reinvent the wheel. Well,
Yes.
no, you've got like templates to kind of already remind you, okay, how many do I need to cut out? And then from there, you can create that randomness. Maybe you can ignore one template completely and say, okay, I know the measurements. Now I'm going to make these different cuts to it. I think there's space for that kind of flexibility and artistic license. But I think that the really great advantage of having pre-cut templates is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's not, it's going to cut down on time. And sometimes you just want to get to the project. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. So I personally have to find a balance of using finding a balance of pre-constructed templates that creates certainty and then find a way to create randomness so that my creativity can kind of flow from that. And finding that balance is really personal. It's up to you how you want to do it. Right? I think it is helpful, very helpful to create your own templates and have them to use. And then from there, kind of decide, to deviate or not. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with not deviating too. But yeah, I mean, talking about this, having this conversation, I think is really helpful in terms of seeing that even seasoned artists, actually more seasoned artists rely more on systems and processes than you think. It's not random. It's not, I cut this petal and it's like, the exact one that I need. No, most of us have notes and a lot of habits and rituals that help us get to where we are, and we never start from scratch. So the question is, how do you want to create that system so that you don't have to start from scratch and reinvent the wheel when you're making the flower, 3 years later. Yeah. So anyways, yeah, I think it is worth that.
I want to add in, as you're doing the process, one thing that I've implemented, because I've been using ChatGPT for quite a while now, 2 or 3 years, and I have a paid version, so I can actually do individual projects. And so I have a project folder where it's just flowers. Within this folder, I have the individual flowers that keeps record of it. So when I'm researching, I'm telling it like, these are the size, these are the colors, these are the crepe paper I've used, more like my own little journal. And I can add in pictures and I can use ChatGPT as my assistant to kind of remind me and do the search. Like, I made this last year. Can you look at the measurements, the color that I use, and my notes? I pretty much do like a brain dump afterwards. I do a brain dump before, in the middle, and afterwards, because it changes as you experiment and do all the different things. And I love that reminders like, oh, you did XYZ. I was like, oh yeah, that triggered my memory and the different process. So I know that I don't have to repeat that exact same experimentation that I was trying to figure out how to do it. So I love that I can use AI to be my assistant, to remind me, to push me to explore things that's like, I remind myself, next time when I do this, I want to use XYZ crepe paper or change it up with watercolor, because I learned something new just last month that I'm like, oh, I need to experiment with that. And so it's just a great way to like input in ChatGPT is like, hey, I did this flower, remind me to use this for this technique in that particular flower. So I know when I come back to it, it'll like ping me. It's like, hey, before you start, you told me to remind you. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. It's just an amazing assistant. Like, I feel like people haven't really used it for that. They use it to write the copies and website and whatnot, but you can dig a little bit deeper and use ChatGPT to kind of like push you to improve as an artist.
So do you have to tell it that you're working on this project again? Is there anything you want to tell me? Or how do you let them how do you let your chatbot know?
So before you leave, when you tell it at the time, you're like, hey, when I log back in next time and I mention this particular flower, remind me that, just to say it. Sometimes like, hey, I'm just doing this, because it might be a year later that I'm working on it and it will remember it, which is so crazy. I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's just like another brain that's just helping you push the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah, I like that.
So cool.
I feel like I love the experimenting part though in general. And I know we're all talking about how we have these templates so that we don't have to redo it. But sometimes the most fun is to revisit it and remember and think about the things that you didn't do like 1 year ago, rather than remind me later. I want it to be more like why didn't I include this part? Or I look at the flower a little bit differently a year later. Like the detail that I probably spent more time on last year is going to look different from this year. It is weird. That's like the most fun. I get all giddy about it. I'm like, ooh, this is so fun. I just want to figure out how to get paid to do this though. You know, the experimenting part? Yeah.
So every once in a blue moon, I'll accept a small commission just so I can revisit the flower again. Yeah. And one thing that I'm working on right now is the daffodil. And I was like, I really want to, because it's not a big order, so I don't have to mass produce. When you mass produce, you need it to can't add, you can't add in all the details. You can't really finite and pinpoint, I want to make sure that the center looks exactly like this, because when you're doing hundreds of flowers, you're trying to be as efficient as possible to reduce your time. But if you can explore and do smaller orders, you can spend the time to experiment and push your boundaries. So that way you're like, I did this. How can I make it quicker? And that's always my thinking when I do experiment on one single flower. And then when I have to mass produce, how can I get that same effect with a lot less steps and a lot less time?
Yeah.
And that's something I'm thinking about as I'm recreating things.
Because there's a business part to it, you know?
Yes,
there is. Sometimes I make a flower and I'm like, I'm never making this again. There's no amount of money that will pay for this, you know? But then you want to make sure you do come up with a flower that you can be able to reproduce. What if someone does request it, you know? So
I have the same problem, but a different mindset, where I tell myself I will never do that flower again. But then the challenge of it bugs me and I want to redo it again. So then I put myself in the same position where I'm doing it. And then I say, man, you said yourself that you will not do this again. But what are you doing? You're doing this again. But I don't know why I put myself, I think it's just a challenge of recreating that flower to make sure that it looks better than what I did before. And I think that's why we've been doing paper flowers for so long, is that beautiful challenge of, the rose. Everyone loves a rose. And there's so many different ways to do the rose and the different types of roses. And because I feel like the Crepe Paper Company comes out with new colors, new weights, you're like, what if I did that with this lighter weight and I laminated it and I color it? And then you learn a new way of coloring. They're like, what if I did this? And so the excitement comes back. And then that's what I really love about that.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the problem solving.
Yeah, it is the problem solving.
That really sparked our creativity and that passion and that motivation to work on something. I also think it makes us see the flower in a different light as well, differently, you know? And I think that anything that makes us see something that's a little bit different is exciting, because then we want to, for whatever reason, we want to we want to explore it. Essentially, right? So sometimes, when you have those lulls where you're like, I don't feel creative. Yeah, maybe try to look at it in a different way, or do some other types of art and see what techniques they use, because sometimes that sparks creativity in us. And we think, wait, what if I did that's perfect for, I don't know, an iris or a sunflower, you know what I mean? And then you get excited and you're like, you know what, I need to redo this. I need to redo my template, or I need to redo the flower, you know, because now you're looking at it differently. And that's the really fun part. Like Sarah said, it's the really fun part is the actual process. The result's great because you're like, it's so beautiful. But then it's the process that I think that's what draws us to the art form to begin with, right?
That flower for me was the anthurium. I think it's called anthuriums.
Yes.
And they're so unique looking. I was going to say weird, but they're so trendy, you know? I see them everywhere. So I was like, okay, I think I did it very early on. It didn't make the cut. I was like, this looks weird. And I revisited it and then I'm like, no, it still looks weird. It's because it's such a, it's like a plain flower and, there's like a uniqueness that you need to make sure it hits.
Yeah.
And there's also like a shape to it, but not like a lot of shaping. So it's really just the right amount. So I revisited it again more recently. And then I actually really liked how it came out enough for me to like display it in my house. And I was like, I think I hit the right things. And you can only do so much with paper. But I thought, it came out pretty good. And so that's probably one of the flowers that I always felt like a little bit weird about it. And then I finally just launched it. That next flower for me is the calla lilies. And they're so plain. I think it's always the plain flowers that it just doesn't look right. It just looks like paper.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to, challenge ourselves for.
Yeah.
Like, how do you make it not look like paper? That one's really hard with cardstock paper because you just
I can
can't
imagine.
shape it.
Yes.
And I always think about it. It's still in the back of my head on my to-do list. And the colors are also plain too. It's like usually white.
Yeah.
Maybe a hint of green. Yeah.
It can look fake really easy. I mean, you talking about the anthurium, like that it took you your third try over a course of many years. It brought me back to a podcast I was listening to about drugs, essentially. Drugs and vaccines, right? About how there's three things you need to know is one is like the body, right? Your body, the cells, how it may react. And then third comes with technology, right? So there needs to be this meeting of, I don't want to say meeting of the minds, but meeting of like many factors, but the big three being, understanding the biology and having the technology to do it and something else, whatever. I don't remember what it was. Sorry. But I was thinking about, in our case, it really is about technology. It's really about techniques, right? And so sometimes you may have this flower that you're like, you have a certain amount of understanding and a certain amount of knowledge of techniques, and you create it and you're like, it's not there yet. And then a couple of years later, you gain more experience, right? More skills, a better understanding of the flower. Maybe you actually started growing it now. So you have a physical model in front of you. And then so you make it again and you're like, it's still not there. It's getting there, but not quite meeting everything yet. And then the third time you make it, you've had 10 years of experience. Maybe you watch a documentary on, I don't know, needleworking or something. And there's a technique in there that you're like, wait, maybe I can try it. Maybe that's where my knowledge has peaked in terms of how I can translate what I know into the perfect anthurium. And that meeting of kind of experience and skill and knowledge is where that coincides and that creates that flower that you finally wanted to produce. And that stuff takes time, And I think it's just a natural evolution where sometimes I think a lot of artists early on, you like imagine them like the most beautiful thing or crazy thing, or like you've got that image in your head, but it takes years to actually produce that image into real life because you just don't have the skills yet. And I think that's a good like reminder that, you might have templates, but templates aren't everything, like we're creating three-dimensional piece of sculpture and templates are still flat. They're still a piece of paper. And so I think templates are a great way to sort of get you started, get the general idea, but ultimately it comes with experience and skill and a sort of a development in how you see something in 3D, whether it's proportion or a relationship between the different elements of it, that kind of takes time to come together. And so, with templates, I think they're really great for giving you the confidence, right? Giving you the confidence to know, okay, I'm at least halfway there with it templates. At least I've got the shape of the petals right. And then from there, you kind of build on that confidence because otherwise it is hard to start from scratch, especially if you're just starting out. So yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just want to make that comment because when you were explaining how you did it, I was like, sometimes the technology is not there. Your skill's not there. Your experience is just not there yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone goes through it, but there'll be a perfect time when everything kind of comes together. And then you produce that flower that you're like, you've always been striving for. But then I think probably once you get to that point, you're like, oh, I want more, like,
exactly.
we want more.
And that's why we're here for 10 years after, right?
You're like, I thought I got it, but no, I got to keep going, I
mean, I challenge our listeners to do templates on your own eventually, because I do think that's when you become a better teacher, right? Do workshops, be more confident because it is your flower that you experimented with for however long, right? If you did it for 3 times, like I did on the anthuriums, now I can teach that no matter what,
Yeah.
And and then even after, you can update your template or update your flower. But I think that's what will get you through to doing workshops, to growing your business. And, both Quynh and Jessie, they had to do templates for their books. And I did templates to actually sell them digitally, which is a whole other business that you could add on. And that's really nice because I feel like that's a way to do passive income as an artist, is to be able to sell the pattern that you created. So I think that's it's a good way to add onto your business. And that's what we talked about on our mastermind. I think it's a good way to get that going in your,
For sure. I mean, if you think about why do people buy templates from you? It really is. I think it's curiosity and two, some confidence, right? Confidence that if they use these templates, they'll be able to make this flower. So, I mean, part of it is building, I think, a library of your own resources to give yourself confidence moving forward. But how do you guys create your templates? Do you trace? Do you, estimate? What do you guys do?
I just cut with printer paper first. That's my number one thing because I know that I don't really want to waste paper. So I just use printer paper and then I start big and then go small, right? Because if you cut too small, you can't go backwards. Yeah. So I cut big and I'm like, okay, I think this is going to work. And then it gets smaller and smaller to the size that I do feel like it's proportionate in my head. And then, before all of that, I actually take hundreds of photos, usually in real life. And then if it's a flower that I've never seen in real life, I'll just try to screenshot a bunch of Google images. And then from there, I'll use printer paper, cut all the pieces. And then I take a lot of those photos as well of my printer paper cutout. And then from there, I trace it actually digitally. So that's through the iPad. I don't sketch it out. I used to before by hand and, with pencil or something. And then I was able to scan it back in the day before the iPad and the whole technology becoming better. But now you can just directly do it through your iPad and your Apple Pen. And it's pretty good. So, and then you turn it into a digitalized thing.
Yeah.
With
Use Procreate, use Adobe Illustrator. That's really been very beneficial. If you don't have that, because it's a paid thing, Canva is a way to work around that too. It's a little bit harder. It's not as accurate, but in a pinch, it will make it happen. So you just make sure you have your grids, your ruler all up and out so you can make sure that your template is the right size. You also want to make sure that when you print it out is actually 8.5 by 11, the sheet of paper people will print it out in the printer at home. So you have to make sure there's a lot of safe measurements before you actually make that happen. And with Jessie questions of how do I do my template? Well, I just go for it. I just take my crepe paper and I start cutting that petal that I've either have the specimen live in front of me, which I've taken the flower apart, or because maybe the flower is very exotic and I can't get my hands on a live specimen, Google's your best friend, and make sure that you're very exact on what you're looking for. Are you focusing on the petal? Are you focusing on the stamens? Are you focusing on the backside, the bracts, the sepals? What are you focusing on? And that way you can tell Google exactly what you're looking at. So you can start collecting all these different images and make sure you're organizing it really well. Put it in Canva, put it in your notes, put it in a Google Doc because you can copy, screenshot, crop, whatever that you need to do. So that way you can revisit it instead of doing that search over and over again. And I can't tell you how many times I searched for it and I forgot to save it. I'm like, that was a perfect image. Why didn't I save that? And so, make sure you do that.
Or I'm the opposite. I save way too many images and I'm like, which one did I think was good enough? Or on my Pinterest, there's way too many photos, I'm like, oh no.
Yes.
I do.
ChatGPT, everybody.
I do recommend using your iPad to, choose a photo. Let's say you want to see the side of the flower. Actually, you know what? Let's make it basic. The front of the flower. Let's say it's sunflower. The sunflower, you can see the front very, very well. There's tons of those images. And if you're curious about, what the shape of the petal is, they have deconstructed photos, a lot of them of the sunflower. But sorry, the point I wanted to make was I sometimes find it helps if I actually sketch it out because we tend to look at something and not really see it, right? Our human eye, our brain is too smart. We're trying to make connections. We're trying to make it make sense. But actually nature we don't really interpret nature in just black and white, just, lines. So I do find it helps to actually sketch it out. So to truly know something, you draw it out. So draw it out as in you got the image, use a black pen and sketch over it. you can always reduce the opacity of the image and then layer on top and draw on top. I find that drawing on top really helps me zone in on the details of the flower that are important. And you notice things differently because you're forcing your eyes to actually look at every outline of the flower, the petals, the bracts, the sepals, the center, whatever it might be, the leaves. It forces you to pay attention to those things that your eyes sometimes gloss over. And those might be things that are really important that actually make the difference between, let's say, leaves, the difference between sunflower leaves versus rose leaves. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but there's some leaves that look very similar. But it forces you to really like zone in on those details. And it also helps you when you look at it without the image and you're just looking at your sketch, it helps you look at the proportions. So proportion of what is the size or length of the petals versus the diameter of the center. What about versus the length of the back of the flower? And so those are the little things that sometimes are very important to when you're creating it in 3-dimension, because proportions are the ones that actually make a huge difference in terms of whether it looks real or not. And we don't always notice that when we're looking. It's kind of like the rose thing where we think we know what a rose looks like, but we actually don't. Like when we try to create it the way that we think it looks like, doesn't look like a rose. It looks fake. It's like, what happened? It's because we're not really looking at it. Our brain is interpreting it as something else. So, go like, even if you're not a good drawer, that's okay. You're just tracing. The process of tracing it forces your brain to look at it in a different way. And with technology nowadays, it's so easy to do that. And those sketches are great because you can always take, let's say, just the sketch of the petal and use that as a reference for your petal template. It doesn't always work, but for a lot of flowers, it does. So, but doing that, even like for a rose, it forces you to look at the actual swirl in the middle. Like, how does it look like? We think it looks like one way. And then when you start sketching it out or just following the lines, you realize, wait, no, it isn't. It's kind of like all over the place. And I think that's really important when we're making a flower, because when we know what we can do and what we shouldn't be doing or be not too worried about doing. But I've found that resketching something has given me so much more depth and understanding of what the spirit of a flower is, what the personality is, and to notice those little things that add, I think, a lot of realism to the work. Yeah. But also the proportions I find incredibly helpful because a lot of time, I'm working on the back of a sunflower right now and I'm just like having a lot of trouble. That's so challenging for me, which is really funny, right? Because you're like, oh, the center of the flower is challenging. It is. But the back, I'm like, it's a different animal. It's like a different structure, right? It's very different from the front and I'm struggling with it. And
yes.
So afterwards, I put it down and I'm like, you know what? I need to go back to basics. I need to look at the photos that I have, that I took a million of them, of those sunflowers from the sunflower field, and look at the proportions, because the proportions of the back on a closed sunflower is different from the ones from the open one. Like, what is that proportion? And it helps me really go back to the basics of, okay, reevaluating. Where am I going wrong? What am I doing right? And that process, like, Sarah was saying, that process in itself is truly exciting because you really discover a lot about it that one glance of a flower will not. So yeah, I mean, I found that very, very helpful. And with the iPad nowadays, like you said, like anything's possible. You can do so many things with it.
And you don't have to be good at sketching, like Jessie said, because the pen, actually, if you look up settings on Google or ask ChatGPT, the settings of each like brush or whatever, like, because I have a shaky hand. And so when you do it with just the bare minimum settings, it's going to have like all the squiggly lines that your hands will draw. So you're supposed to actually maybe get that stabilizing thing, I don't know, under the settings. And so once you have that, it's going to actually like glide nicely. So you can kind of mess with all the settings and then figure out what you like on how you feel is natural to drawing. Yeah.
You can also get like you said, I mean, think about tools. You can get a special nib on your pen, or you could put a layer on top
like
of
a protector.
Yeah, protector.
That feels like paper.
Yeah. And those I found really helpful. It does feel like writing on paper. And the great thing about it as well is you can always like erase it. You can like always undo, which is really bad because in real life you're like undo. You're like, I can't do that in real life. But on the computer or on the iPad, you can always undo it. So
and I do it in different layers. I was just going to say I do it in different layers so that I could just delete it if that didn't look right or something.
Yeah.
Just gotta remember to add that extra layer because I always forget.
And then you're doing it on the original and you go back and you're like, oh
no.
Man. Yeah. I know. It's funny that we have to learn how to do the iPad even as a paper artist.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it's such a strong tool for us, especially if you're trying to figure out how to make templates.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally started with just scanning on your printer, but I know we've come such a long way. Why would you scan now, right? Like you might as well use your iPad or, whatever you can
Or
with
whatever.
the new
Yeah.
technology. So
Yeah. It's totally doable. I mean, and if you're doing templates for yourself, I mean, they could be handwritten. Like you don't need to scan anything. You could be handwritten. You just keep it for yourself, right? It's a good start wherever you start. Once you go with the iPad and you learn how to use it, it's very, very practical.
Yeah. Even if you don't want to do it digitally, and if you happen to have a laptop or like an iPad of another nature, you can just put a plain printer paper, turn up the brightness really, really high and the contrast. Then you can start tracing it with just a pencil and paper on the screen itself. To do that. So you don't have to learn another tool like Procreate. That's another animal. But if you do, I mean, it's a great way to like digitize everything. So I want to encourage you to start doing your own template. It's not as scary as you think it is because you just got to do it. And once you do it, try it again. And just give yourself grace to like know that you can mess up, but just know this is for your eyes only. And it's your experimentation. It's part of your paper flower journey to get to the next stage in your artist life. So I'm going to move on to our favorite portion or my favorite portion of under $20 that you have purchased that you just brought happiness to your life. Who wants to start?
I bought a phone charm and it was so cute. And for the longest time, I didn't want to add dangly things onto my phone, but which is funny because I think that's where we started. Maybe when we first had our phones, like the flip phones, we had keychains on there, I think.
Yeah.
And then, we stopped doing that, but now it's coming back. And I was like, I think I'm ready for a little dangly thing on my phone. And it's so cute. It brings me happiness. I think it was like $15 and it has little flower charms. Kind of reminds me of like a friendship bracelet, like,
oh yes,
but it has flowers on it. So I was like, it sold me immediately when it had a flower bead or something on it. It was like $15. I don't know. I don't know what's the like functionality behind it, but it's cute when you're taking a selfie, I guess. I don't know.
I always enjoyed like hearing it because like, I don't know. Mine always had like a little, I had a little, I don't know, like you could hear it when you like picked up your phone and I don't know. It's just like an accessory for your hands.
Well, it is a wristlet. So you're supposed to actually, use it on your wrist, I guess, like hang it.
Oh, yeah.
But then I don't know if I fully trust the wristlet part. It's just there for decoration. And you're like, people are really going all deep into this, like accessorizing your phone. There's like little charms, little like stickers that you could add onto the back. I really got into it. I was like, it reminds me of like when I was in high school, I put rhinestones on the back of my cell phone. So it kind of reminds me of that, like putting stickers onto the back. Yeah.
It is coming back. Everything has a life cycle, right? Everything comes back.
It does. The wide pants, the narrow pants,
the cross.
It's
back.
I feel like there's only so many things you can do with pants, and they just recycle.
No, exactly.
How about you, Jessie? What's your $20 item?
It's a balloon pump. So it's my son's birthday tomorrow, and to decorate our house and whatnot. He's having he's having people over for a party. And so we always have balloons. And this year I was like, I'm going to finally get a balloon pump because like every time we blow it ourselves, like somebody like wants to pass out. And I'm just like, just buy one. Like they're like, they're probably like, the one I got was like $5. So we got one of those and it's been great. Like it's so fast. I'm like, wow, like what we did with ourselves before was like all of us, we teamed up and we would all, blow the balloons, which is pretty much just me and my husband. But now it's like my kids can use the pump and it's so much faster. So we're going to use it a lot. It's going to have good use over the years.
Yes. Yay. I know,
very practical, but honestly, like the best for a kid's birthday party.
Yeah. And they're so easy to use.
They're so easy. Like, they're super easy. Pump it up. And I have to tile them though. That's the only thing. So I still have to do something, but like at least the kids can blow up the balloons. Otherwise, it's literally me and my husband just like huffing and puffing. Really, I don't know. At the end, I get like dizzy because you lose so much air.
Yes,
oxygen. Sorry, not just air. Oxygen. I meant. But what about you, Quynh?
So I've been journaling quite a bit, and this one tool I saw on a video on Instagram, someone was using this acrylic clear triangle ruler that had measurement inside, and it had like really sharp edges. And I was like, you know what? It was under $5. And I was like, I'm just going to get it because I need measuring. I always measure my petals, just everything. And just knowing that I can draw a straight line and see through it. So I'm not, because I have metal rulers, which is great, but it's also, you can't see underneath. So the lines are not perfect. And that just cleared all my problems. I could see where I'm underlining and making the lines, and I could still measure like I want to do it 2 inches. It's exactly like that. It's great. So yeah, I will share the link because it's one of the best things I purchased so far this year. It's so simple, but it gives me so much pleasure.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on this particular episode. If you started making your own templates or want to jump onto making it, share your thoughts and share some tips and advice because I know other people are struggling with it and we would love to hear from you. Make sure to like and follow us and we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.